Welcome, everybody, to the High Return Real Estate Show. I am here with my illustrious business partner, Mr. Jack Gibson. How you doing, Jack?
Doing great, Shecky. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I am very excited because we've got an amazing guest on the show today. I'm not going to tell you his name, but he has some just incredible experiences, not just in our space, but just in life experiences. And we are going to learn a lot about what to do and what not to do. This is a very, very action-packed show, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the High Return Real Estate Show, the podcast for heavy hitters. 2 men, 1 mission. It's time to build your empire.
All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Shecky along with Jack Gibson at the High Return Real Estate Show, and I'm really, really excited to introduce a really, really amazing man. His name is Jay Massey, and Jay is really a legend in real estate circles and on the internet. He has got a ton of experience. This is a man who started with some really, really difficult health challenges, both with him and his wife, and leverage some of that bad luck into some incredibly great and profitable experiences in the world of real estate investing. Went on to become an amazing coach and mentor to a lot of other real estate investors and people that were coming up the ranks. Went from there into operating a turnkey business like ours. So just an incredible wealth of experience, and has since moved on from that too, which we're also going to talk about. But there's so much on this guy's CV that we're just super excited to have you here, Jay. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I am glad to be here already.
Well, good. Yeah, well, we're super glad to have you. So if you don't mind, just, give the listeners I know I alluded to some of the initial start of your career and some of those health challenges. Could you give us a little more in depth about how that all played out?
Sure, absolutely. And before I do, I just want to make sure that everyone understands one very important thing, that I hope that no matter what you hear today, that your story is not written. It is not over. In fact, in many cases, it's just beginning. And today, Shecky, I tend to think of what happened to us, not so much as something that happened to us, but more or less a gift that we were given. I didn't think about it and didn't feel like it at that time, but today that's kind of the case. And for those that don't know, a few years ago, I was a financial planner, and my wife, recruiter by trade. We were doing what financial planners and recruiters do. We had, just purchased our first house for ourselves, and we were going about building a family. We had recently had a miscarriage, however, and then we found ourselves pregnant again. So that was kind of exciting. Except my wife, when she's pregnant, she has a condition known as hyperemesis. What that simply means is that when she is pregnant, she cannot do something as simple as eat or drink. And that freaked me out, to say the least. So I went to go play volleyball one day. I grew up playing basketball, and if we've ever met in person, I'm on the taller side of life. And so I figured, how hard could volleyball be? I know how to dunk a basketball. It's volleyball. It's not that hard. You jump, you hit the ball. Well, turns out jumping was easy. Landing was difficult. I ended up landing on a guy's head, punctured my lung. So here's the scene. My wife is pregnant. She's unable to eat or drink. I'm a financial planner with a punctured lung, and I was born with asthma. That meant I could not walk and talk simultaneously. It was a challenge, to say the least, to figure out how we were going to earn an income. And it was the first time that I really understood that if I did not go to work, we did not eat. So we started selling our personal possessions on eBay because I didn't know what else to do. I literally couldn't physically do anything else. And once our garage got empty, we started emptying our friends' garage. And then once their garages were empty, then we started going to garage sales and estate sales. And it was around that time a friend comes to me and says, "Hey, guess what?" I'm like, "What? You can do that for real estate." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You know how you're buying, cell phones from CompUSA?" This is back when CompUSA was going out of business. "You know how you're buying cell phones from CompUSA at a discount and you're reselling them on eBay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "You can do that with real estate." I'm like, "Really?" Well, I don't have any money. I don't have any credit. I mean, at the time, you got to understand, literally no money, no credit. Credit score was 398. at that lunch meeting we were having. I told him, disclosed after we're sitting down, by the way, you're paying for lunch because I have no money. That's literally how it was going down. And if you can do this with no money, no credit, then I'm your guy, because I am literally no money, no credit. And that's kind of how we started. I mean, we were making decisions, electricity or food. Which is it do you pay in order to make life work? And really long story short, I started out, I bopped around many different transactions or tried many different strategies, and eventually settled on wholesaling. Turns out I had a good head for finding a deal and deal structure and financial strategy. And that all layered on top of one another ultimately turned into me being able to not only find deals, but pre-package them in such a way that people could use their retirement plan to buy them. And thus TurnKey provider was born, because all I had to go find was people who needed a retirement plan, because I could go structure these deals over and over and over again. And
what markets were you in, Jay? I'm sorry to interrupt. What markets were you serving when you were doing that?
My very first transaction was in San Bernardino, California. And then I certainly then realized that California doesn't like business owners or my money. So we started doing deals in other states. We primarily, when we were doing TurnKey, was Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Georgia. And then from that TurnKey operation, I got kind of bored and I needed something else to do, which then began, instead of selling them, I started keeping them. And then I was keeping single family houses, and we would buy 10, 20, 30 at a time. And then I got bored with that. So I started learning to do notes. Then once we got up like a whole bunch of notes, that was wonderful. But then it was really boring just waiting for those checks to come. So I then said, okay, I need something else. And that's when I went over to apartment buildings, anywhere from 8 units up to like 182 units. And that kind of hooked me. I liked that. I'm like, oh, this is good, but I still wanted more. I knew there was more that was out there. And that's how I got into cell phone towers, because I was like, yeah, this was exciting. I liked the way that I could wheel and deal and be able to accelerate and then sell the leases for higher dollar amounts today. Learning about time value of money is really important. And then eventually, more or less said, you know what? I want to bring this closer to home, because I have 4 kids and I needed a way to transition from the commercial real estate, cell phone towers, and apartments. And I wanted to create some jobs locally for the people at my church and other organizations, to where I could see them, because I had created millions of dollars of opportunity for other people, but I could not affect the ones that were right here at home. And then my younger kids, I have 4 total. The younger 3, they didn't really know, what does your dad do? I mean, if you ask them, they would say things like he's a YouTube star or he goes to work. I'm like, that's not the right answer. And I wanted them to see, what dad did. So by transitioning over to short-term rentals, which is where we have planted our flag, they've now gotten their hands dirty. They've helped build units. They've seen the process, and it's been pretty exciting.
So you say you kept the common theme, you kept getting bored, right? Isn't that it's a major challenge for entrepreneurs, right? We do something, we work through the challenges, we get it to where it's making money and cash flowing, right? And then we're like, I need a new challenge.
I need something else.
Then we do something else. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I have grown. I have grown to appreciate that about myself. And now that I understand that that's just where it is. That's one of the things I like about the short-term rental game, is every new customer is a completely new experience to some degree, because even though we serve the same, demographics over and over again, everybody's got their own way of handling it. And it's so dynamic, and it requires such a different skill set that I can't really get bored with it. And it's been great. Plus, I mean, I'm not gonna, when it comes down to it, it was a numerical decision. I mean, when you can double your rents and without increasing your expenses more than 10%, it was insane to be able to look at what's possible. And it gives me an opportunity to apply my creativity in a way that I've not been able to thus far.
That's awesome. Just FYI, side note, my goal for this show, Jay, is to hold your attention for the next 20 minutes.
Go for it. You're doing good. So far.
Okay. Because I'm curious to know more about sort of this transition away from turnkey. And obviously, Jack and I are turnkey providers, and, we're pretty high on what we do. I'm nowhere near the point where I'm bored with it yet. We still have plenty of challenges, but I want to know kind of, what is it that caused you to transition away from it? And obviously, we know there's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes in our business. And why did you kind of give up on it? I don't mean to use negative words, but transition away from it.
Well, it's primarily two things. One, and you guys know this, but you're the example of this, is when you are working with a turnkey provider, you are as good or as bad as the management. And when you have management challenges, that challenge is pervasive, period. There's no, you can't really get around it. It's really, really tough to work that out. And I was not willing to do what it would take to become the manager. I never wanted to be the manager or own the property management company. I wasn't even willing to build one. So it was a matter of finding the right relationships that could manage in the way that I found or believed would be perfect, not only for us, but also for our customers, because we're making promises and that they've got to fulfill upon. And when they can't fulfill upon basic accounting practices, making sure that spreadsheets and the reporting is done in a timely fashion, especially when the person is long-term. Accounting is such a huge thing. In order to maintain that trust, we have to do so much work to get that trust. This is a high trust, high dollar sale from the beginning, and it can be lost simply because a manager, the investor did not get one maintenance receipt. And if you don't have a manager who understands that and takes it seriously, it can be a problem. So that was huge for me. And then secondly, what it came down to is that no matter how, at least this is how it felt. It didn't matter how good of a deal we set up for them. It didn't matter how well it went. If anything went wrong, it was always our fault. Always our fault. They would tell us things like, you know what? We don't need your manager. We can manage it ourselves. Okay, cool. No problem. 6 months, 12 months, 18 months later, it goes south. It's my fault. Somehow it was my fault. Whatever it was always our fault. And that frustrated the tar out of me. I'm like, no, I'm not responsible for your bad management practices. We told you not to put that particular tenant in there. We said, no, you should wait. You're like, no, I got to pay the mortgage. And you made the decision. And now it's our fault. It could be things like that just got to me. And I'm like, you know what? There's got to be a better way to go out there and provide value to the marketplace. Because see, this is what I loved about it. I loved knowing that I was creating an opportunity, and that's what you guys do. You create an opportunity. It's an uncommon opportunity for the common person in a way that they would never have access to otherwise, and that is immensely valuable because when you realize that what you need is not a stack of cash, but a stream of it, you don't need piles, you need streams. And when you know you can have a reliable place to go buy streams of cash, then man, this retirement, this financial planning, this game gets much, much easier. Because if you were an athlete, you'd have a shot at royalty deals in some way, shape, or form. If you were an artist, you could do that too. But if you're not those things, how are you going to build a retirement? How are you going to build streams of cash? I don't care what stack you have. Here's what I know about every person listening. That if I told you right now, I'm going to give you $10,000 every month, but here's the condition. You have to empty out 100% of your bank account right now. And you have to spend the $10,000 that I give you every month. And so long as you spend every penny, I will give you another $10,000 next month on time. I have found that so many people can work on that. It's not about the amount of money you have in the bank. It's about how much money, how much cash flow, how much value are you bringing to the marketplace? And that's what you guys do. You're making that a real possibility for anyone listening to you. And unfortunately, at least my experience was people didn't appreciate it enough for me to want to keep doing it.
Wow.
I mean, you know, like, look, Shecky, I mean,
I'm just sitting here shaking my head.
I know.
I'm like,
I'm like, check. Yeah, that's what we're going through.
What's interesting to me, thank you for saying that, Jay, but what's interesting to me is that how, and this is just sheds light on another layer of the conversation that we've already had, which is how often the term turnkey is bastardized and used in a different way, because it's interesting to me that there are a lot of quote unquote turnkey providers out there that do not have the property management component in place.
Right.
And the fantastic thing for those providers, of course, is to say, here's a great deal. Once you've bought the property from us, we're off the hook. Go do whatever you want. But
right.
You were very eloquent in the way you stated it to say, look, most of the performance of this property lies on the shoulders of proper management. And
100%.
yeah, and it's true no matter who you use. And one of the things that we noticed in our model is that if we do some things behind the scenes with our property management, both in terms of, pretty heavy collection efforts and, just making sure that things happen the way they're supposed to. Sometimes we even pay for some stuff behind the scenes, some of the minor incidental stuff, because that way it smooths out the ride for the investor. And they go to another property management company that's outside. They could be the best one in the country, but that property management still has to make a profit and rest on the money that comes in, not just from the 10% of rent. They can't make it on that. They have to be charging for all the other stuff.
Yep.
And that's where the investor really gets into trouble. Everybody can, like, to use your word, spreadsheet. Sure, let's figure 10% management fees every month. That's not where the money gets washed down the drain.
Nope.
The money gets washed down the drain because what should really be a $75 toilet call, becomes a $500 bill to the investor.
Yep.
And that's where you lose all your ROI. So, I agree with you. Yes, we are very much in the business of creating an experience for the investor that's an opportunity that they otherwise wouldn't have. And yes, we experience that frustration too, in that oftentimes we are or underappreciated for the value that we provide. So
yep.
Let's not all, Jack, you got something you want to say?
Well, yeah, I mean, so first off, the management expectation, I mean, we went through that with our first management company that we originally, formed our partnership with.
Yeah.
And when they went south, everything got pointed back to me and to you. We were the ones that then had to clean up the mess that was left by a terrible property management company. Now, we partnered with them, right? We thought they were good. In the end of the result was that they were not. So just because we sold the property, now everything has fallen back on us this past 8 months to try to fix. And we're fixing, but, it's quite a mess. So the underappreciated part is absolutely true. Like when it's working and they're getting their cash flow, it was supposed to work that way. Like this is what you guys put out and projected. I'm getting, my 10, 12, 13, whatever, 14% return. And nothing's ever said. So no news is good news, but anything goes wrong, boom, it comes back on us. So it's in that regard, I'd love to have more investors, like you said, that really appreciate like what we're doing by setting them up with streams of cash flow. I'm probably asking for too much, right? What you found?
I mean, again, it's a choice. It can be done. I just chose to no longer do it. I'm like, you know what? There's got to be something better for me. There's got to be a different way to be able to create value or create similar styles of value at the same time. And I just think it's just an education process, because this retail experience that we have when you just go to the store, you pick up a bottle of milk, we go, okay, cool. I got milk. I just went to the store. All I had to do was get in my car, give them some money. I got milk. I'm sure the farmer who raised the cow and milks the cow and does what they do to produce the milk that we eventually have probably feels the exact same way, because we just take it for granted that that's what's supposed to happen. No, there's lots of work that goes into this process to make it that easy for you. Yes, it's supposed to be great, but it's not always that great.
Yeah.
So I want to segue a little bit. You mentioned something that really made my ears perk up when you used the term double the rental amount that you could pick up. I mean, obviously, anytime somebody starts talking like that, my ears are going to perk up. So
that's what got my attention too, though.
Yeah. So let's dive into that. I really want to find out more, and I'm sure the listeners do too, about what you're up to and how you're able to create, double a rental return with this. I guess it's more of a short-term renter play, which in my mind means, oh my God, it's a whole lot more work in finding the kinds of people that are going to rent short term, and is there Airbnb or HomeAway, and who else is getting involved, and how many times am I washing sheets and all that other kind of crap. So tell me how that works.
Okay, no problem. Just like I did before, let me preface this by saying we don't have the time to get all of it done, but for those that are already know, and you're like, yeah, I want to find out more, we have a 90-minute presentation put together for you that explains it at cashflowdiary.com/star, STAR.
We'll put that in our show notes too for you.
Oh, perfect. Cashflowdiary.com/star. So with that being said, understand that's what you said, or what I said about the double the rent and the expenses. That's what got my attention, because what happened is one of the students who I had been teaching and helped raise a lot of capital, because a lot of people know me for helping them raise millions and upon millions of dollars. And they came to me and said, Jay, we didn't do with the money like you said. And I was like, that's usually a bad sign.
Don't ever tell me that again.
Right? It's like, what did you do? And it turns out there's like, well, what we did is we went over here and we did this, short-term rental thing. And I'm like, okay, tell me more. And then they were in this decision period where they were going, well, do we keep doing our student housing, which is a profitable niche, okay, or do we do this short-term rental thing? And I'm like, well, the numbers will tell us what to do. And then they showed me the numbers, and I was like, hold on, wait, that's every month? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, and how long has that been going? They're like, it's about 12, 18 months. I'm like, okay. And at that moment, just from the numbers alone, I said to them, and clearly, I was like, you don't understand what you have. In fact, I'm going to do it too. And I've never said, I've had the privilege of being on so many stages and in front of tens of thousands of people. I've been offered many opportunities. This is the only time I've ever said that. And it was simply because of the numbers. And I knew that if I brought systems to it, it could be scaled, and the time that you guys were talking about could be brought way down. So in essence, here's the concept, and it's no different. We've all been exposed to it. We just don't think of it this way. In the same way that when you go to Costco or some sort of retailer and you buy 24 cans of soda or water or whatever, you buy those 24 cans at a discounted price because you're buying 24 of them at once. Well, vending machine operators figured this out a long time ago. They'll buy that same 24 for $5, $6, but then they sell each one for 50 cents. They just sell and package each one in a more convenient time and location than having to drive all the way over to Costco to go pick it up. So it's already cold, it's in the vending machine. Therefore, they can charge a little bit more because they've placed it in the right spot. Well, what if you as a landlord did the same thing? So here's what I mean. The lazy way, and this is what I used to do, and it still works, obviously. Landlording's been around for a while. The lazy way is we sell a year's worth of time all at once. Because, man, we got the lease, we're done. We don't have to worry about it for an entire year. Well, when we do that, we literally just give them the space to use. Well, what if we broke that down? What if we could sell it by the day or by the week? Well, that means we need to provide more. We need to be more convenient, just like the vending machine operators. So in our case, we'll furnish the place. We'll make sure it has the, your necessary internet and cable or the TV, etc. And making sure that you can just walk in, put your clothes and do your thing, whether you're there for work or whether you're there for medical reasons. These are the areas that we tend to play in. And what ends up happening is what was maybe a $2,000 or a $1,000 or $1,200 a month rent suddenly becomes $2,400 to $3,000 a month because you now have the ability to charge more if you do it on a per day basis because you're packaging everything together. And that's what we found. I mean, we've got students in Canada, we've got them in Poland, we've got them in Russia, South America, and various different places. We also obviously in the US, all across. And what we have found is that many traditional landlords who have been renting either their houses or apartment units for whatever they rent for in your marketplace on a monthly basis right now, they at a minimum have been able to double their revenue without increasing their expenses by more than 10%. That is translated means higher NOI, period, across the board. And when you have that higher NOI, especially on an apartment building, you apply that cap rate, woo, now we're talking something that's just beautiful on a whole different level. The challenge has been training, and this is where we're focusing today, is helping people understand the systems that need to be in place. So right now, we run 27 units. I have 27 units. We run them. And now understand, on those 27 units, we'll probably do $1 million to $1.3 million in revenue on an annual basis. Okay. Most of them are one bedrooms and singles. So that, and let me say this another way. Imagine your one bedroom now generating $50,000 a month. Okay. Or not $50,000 a year. Sorry. That's what we're talking about. But now imagine putting together a system to where to do that literally takes you no more than 90 minutes per day. That is the work. It's literally 90 minutes per day to making sure that, yes, the sheets get changed, that the property gets cleaned, that new customers are found and negotiated, and the pricing is done. All of that you're talking about, that is the work. Technology is entering the real estate space in such a way that if we as landlords don't wake up, we're going to find ourselves missing tenants, because here's what I found to be true. I have found a number of tenants who are now using sites like the Airbnbs, the HomeAways of the world to find their next place to stay. I can't even tell you how many people we get on a daily, weekly basis that are saying, we're moving to the area, and before we find our forever place that we're going to rent out, we're going to stay with you for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Some are even making the decision to not even ever find a permanent place to stay, and they literally stay with us 6, 7, 8 months before they go, well, now we're going to go to the other side of town and we're going to live there for 6, 7, 8 months. And I'm not kidding you. This is happening over and over and over again. And it's even becoming that much more prevalent among the corporate travelers as well.
Wow. Love it. So just to thin slice this a little bit,
Sure.
when you when you use the Costco model,
Yep.
Would it be safe to assume then that the program that you are using and employing yourself and teaching your students also includes or discludes, I'm not sure if that's the right word, owning the actual property? So when you said that, in my mind, it seemed like, okay, wait a minute. Could I go out and get a 12-month lease on a place at a 12-month rate, and then from there thin slice that down into weekends and the odd days and maybe a short month here and that kind of thing, and be charging much more? And basically I'm kind of making the arbitrage in between the two.
Now you're just trying to get me all kinds of excited, aren't you?
Well, that's how you play the game with no money, right?
Yes, there you go. And that's what, because see, when I first started, what I was doing, I went down the street. I live in a city known as Mission Viejo, California. Houses are not cheap. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to just go down the street, get one of these houses that I knew was for sale. And that's what I was doing. I was negotiating the sale. I was going to take it over subject to. I knew how to do this stuff. I could control more real estate. That's not hard. And then I stopped, I was in escrow and I stopped, and I was like, okay, let's do the math. How much is it going to cost me to close on this deal, rehab it, and then furnish it? Okay. And I had a number. And then 45 days later, I also have a mortgage payment. I'm like, okay, let's look at this. What's really going to happen? And now, for the sake of this conversation, let's call that $100,000. What I realize is I could put the $100,000 and I get one unit. That one unit, it's awesome. It's going to make some money. Great. However, what if I take that same $100,000 and divide that across 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different units and use a lease instead? Because you are correct, Shecky. What I needed was control, not ownership. And here's what I've discovered is that it takes the average American family many years to save up the down payment that they need for their first rental property. And you treat that thing with such care, and you agonize over which house and how many units. So this is what I would say to you, especially as a short-term rental provider. Would you rather have a family that took years to save up their, $20,000 or $30,000 or whatever it is it takes to get started in the markets that you're working in, so that they could buy once? Or would you prefer the customer who took that same money, got 3 different short-term rentals going, that same $30,000, got 3 different short-term rentals going, and who could buy a house from you every 8 to 10 months? Which would you want?
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this thing can generate, all it does is generate down payments. This is my down payment goose. It just lays down payment eggs over and over and over and over again. This is amazing.
Yeah.
When I discovered that, I was like, okay, I got to tell everybody. That's really what happened.
So my question, kind of like when I think about the short-term rental market, is there really that much demand in the short-term rental market?
Oh, my friend. Yes.
That's I don't even understand it, fathom it.
I didn't either. Yeah. I didn't either. I did not either until I started, because I was concerned that there was going to be a vacancy problem or something. I don't know. I was concerned. And everybody goes,
if you're signing up for a lease, you're on the hook for that for the next 12 months. If you can't make it work with the arbitrage, you're in trouble.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. But hold on. Aren't you in trouble if you bought a mortgage? Because I'd rather do 12 months versus 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, and these were the things that I was going through in my head. I'm like, let's look at the risk that I am taking. I'm taking either a 30-year risk or a 12. I'll take 12 months all day long. Now, I was the exact same way. I was like, who on earth, and is this going to really work? And so now what you're really talking about is marketing, and is there enough demand for this? And here's what we've discovered at this moment. There's more demand than there is supply. Therefore, most people are being overpaid for the quality of housing that they're currently provided. I wish what I was about to say right now was an exaggeration, but it's not. I have seen locations advertised to where the kitchen table is literally a picnic table inside the house, and people are still being able to rent them out. I have seen people literally advertise, you can sleep on the couch, and they're getting $80, $60 to $80 a night. It makes no sense. And I'm just like, okay, hold on. What that said to me is, you just have to be present. You don't even have to be good yet. So what happens when the market matures and the customer understands quality and all of the certifications and things that will be in place are there? That means the cream will rise to the top. Okay, cool. We're going to train. We're going to become the cream and train them so that our students will dominate wherever they are. And that's exactly what's happened, regardless of jurisdiction. When one of our students come into town, so to speak, all of the amateurs have to start copying what they're doing, because they're doing it so well and they've got so many things working in their favor that they just can't compete. It's insane.
So just to be clear, so one of the things, obviously I'm always trying to play devil's advocate too.
Go for it. Bring it.
And you talk about this, 90 minutes a day thing. In my mind, obviously managing a tenant can be a huge pain in the ass.
Agreed.
And clearly managing a short-term tenant, I can't imagine being any less of a pain in the ass. So you just get rid of them sooner and get more money out of them. But what I am concerned about is advertising and washing sheets and getting people in and out of properties. And there's a lot of, logistical things that have to happen in order to, turn that and get it ready for the next renter. Because obviously time is money in that regard. Like if you got somebody leaving at 9 a.m. and another one coming back at 7 p.m, man, you got to have your what together to have that ready. And if you've got a day job or other family responsibilities, that's going to be tough.
Well, if you're doing it yourself, you're 100% correct. And so that we're really clear, the people who have had the most success are the ones who have had a day job. We've helped a lot of them transition much faster than I even knew was possible, to be honest. And to be even more clear, we don't have between 9 and 7. That would be a miracle if we had that much time. We do ours between 11 and 4. 11 and 4 every day is when the turns happen. So with that being said, remember how I said technology is what enables this and makes this possible? So we have a technology stack of softwares that does a lot of communication and the heavy lifting on our behalf. Plus, because of things like home automation, using the correct home automation tools, we've been able to put together packages that allow us to keep the property safe and secure, so that we have, and in many cases, we'll have direct connections to law enforcement and the fire departments, if need be, so that we can eliminate any sort of hassle or threat of squatting or someone being there who's not supposed to be there. So yeah, I hear you. I coming from the traditional landlord space, these were all things I was sketchy concerned about. Like, who is it? How do I get them out? And how does that work? Because I never want to clean a toilet or wash a sheet in my entire life. But here's what has happened, guys. Here's what's happened. Because this has exploded in such a way, there's been a secondary industry has sprung up to serve this new type of entrepreneur. See, what the hotels have missed is that they have trained tens of thousands, dare I say hundreds of thousands of really good people who know how to clean. And yet they've also treated them poorly, so poorly, in fact, that they're willing to come and work with us because we can treat them better, give them consistent work, and they get to set their own hours per se. And that's what has happened in so many major metropolitan areas. These companies are springing up to fill in the need, whether it be cleaning, whether it be maintenance. We have our own customized linen service. So we literally, I'll go buy the linens, go buy the sheets, put them in our storage facility. Our cleaning crew shows up on time, takes the dirties, puts them in the storage facility. Our linen guy comes and picks them up, takes them to his laundromat, cleans them, drops them back off. Done and done. And it's all done. All of the communication and coordination of that is all handled inside software. So we physically never have to have a human involved in that process on our staff unless something goes wrong. Okay, so when something gets broken, we have we use another piece of software that communicates to us where the team can say, hey, this is broken. Well, conveniently, I know, like certain things are going to get broken. So yes, we have extra forks, knives, spoons, toasters sitting in the storage unit to replace them.
Sure.
So that it happens again between 11 and 4. And we just run that cycle over and over and over again. And it's about systems and processes to where you can quarterback the system. And that's what that's kind of how I look at it. You quarterback the system, and that quarterbacking literally is 90 minutes a day. It's just 90 minutes a day. And that's how I look at it. It's crazy to think about revenue relative to the work hours, is 90 minutes. Yeah. Now, that's not to say we haven't had some crazy stuff. There have been times where crazy stuff happens, because there are some days where you might work 5 minutes, like literally 5 minutes. But there are other days where you will make up for that it'll average 90 minutes across a month, because I remember one time we had an issue with termites. That was more than 90 minutes that day. For sure. We had an issue with ants. That was very frustrating and more than 90 minutes that day. So it's not like things don't happen. They do, but we also have systems in place and are prepared to handle them in a very professional manner, such that we can still, even with termites and ants and And someone, I mean, we don't get lockouts anymore, because that's probably the most common thing that people will deal with if you're not set up properly, is the person is locked out and can't get in and doesn't know what to do. And then they start freaking out because they're in a foreign place. We don't really get that anymore, but those situations, yeah, it can be very, very stressful. In general, if you know how to handle arrival correctly, and you've communicated clearly from the beginning, you set the expectation properly, this system it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Do you find that this works better in some classes of property than others, or does it pretty much across the board? It works A, B, C. Got it. Even D.
Yeah. Well, it's not about the class of property, and this is common amongst real estate people who have a real estate background. They think it's the property. It's not the property. It's the experience they have at the property, which is, let me say it a different way. One of the fundamental questions that we teach everybody is, who do you want to serve? Think about that first. If you say to me, like if you said to me right now, Jack, hey, I want to serve the CEO who's relocating for a new business. Okay, that's a certain class of property that he or she would be expecting. So yeah, I'm going to tailor for that. If you say to me, well, I want to serve nurses who traveling nurses. Well, guess what? That's not the same property necessarily, because travel nurses have a completely different budget than the CEO relocating with his family, right? So those are two completely different properties. And what it comes down to is that you can still create a great experience. You just need to know whom you're serving first. And this gets all the way down. And this is, I've learned so much because we've been exposed to so many different cultures. Being an African-American male who's bald, this is important, hear me, I neglected at the beginning to include hair dryers in the unit. People have hair. What?
Right.
Hair? What's that?
I'm like, oh, I guess you would need those things.
For sure.
Additionally, our clientele was decidedly Asian, especially in our Orange County locations. So they kept wanting to order stuff, and having packages delivered is an automatic no. So violation of security rules for so many reasons. But I eventually asked them, what is it that you're trying to order? And they're like, oh, we need a rice cooker. And I'm like, duh, that's silly. So now we put rice cookers in our units, right? Because it cut down that. I'm just like, there's so many little things like that you're going to learn, which will, I think, makes you a better human at the beginning of the day. But these are not, I didn't grow up with rice cookers and hair dryers. It's not my thing. I don't know what that, but you get to learn these little things along the way. And it's about the experience at the property, not is it a 5-star luxury property. Now, some of our students are totally doing that. In fact, they're customizing and going totally high end, because guess what? Movie studios need a set. Well, that's a short-term rental, right? Movie studios need a set. So if you have a collection of houses that have been proven faithful to be used as sets, you wonder why when you look at, I don't know, Wayne Manor in the DC universe, and why when you look at, it's Bruce, Batman, and X-Men. Batman, and if you look at Batman movies and the X-Men movies, it's the same house. Okay, this is true so many times. There's just so many ways to slice the short-term rental, the short-term rental pie. You just don't think about it until you're in it, and then you see it everywhere you go. And yeah, if you want to do the super high-end houses, you're okay, cool. You're going to be doing $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a week. And if you're doing movie sets, you might be doing that a day. But you're going to have higher vacancy, right? You need a high revenue business, not a high occupancy business. And you just got to think those numbers through in order to make it work. And the opposite is also true. We tend to focus on 1-bedrooms and studios. I like apartment buildings as opposed to houses. I've done houses. I just prefer apartment buildings because I have ultimately here's the fun part, Shecky. You ready? Imagine this. Imagine operating an entire 10, 12, 20 unit building, being able to then prove the numbers to a lender, and then asking them to give you a purchase loan based on these new numbers it becomes a completely different situation when you're ready to transition into owning that property, because now we're proving the income that's significantly higher than market rent. So qualifying for the loan and finding these things, it's amazing what's beginning to happen in the financing realm as well.
Yeah, God, that's so cool.
One more question. So what's your typical occupancy percentage across the board?
Yeah. If you are following the systems that we've put together and you're being hyper lazy, you should get around 80 to 82, 85%. If you're being diligent, you're going to get to the 92 to 95%.
So you're telling me that 100 days out of the year, we're going to have 5 vacant days.
Yeah. If you're being diligent.
You're being diligent. And if
you got to be diligent, because the most
20 vacant days.
That is correct. Yeah. Because here's what's missing is when it comes down to the most difficult thing in airlines and hotels, they spend billions of dollars on this one thing. It's revenue management. Knowing that what a Tuesday is worth 3 months from now is different than knowing what a different Tuesday is worth 3 months from now that happens to be the Tuesday before Christmas, or that happens to be the Tuesday that Beyonce is coming to town, or happens to be the Tuesday that the NBA game is happening. That's a complete science. That is the hardest thing of this entire business, is figuring out your pricing and what it needs to be, how many days is a minimum, what your minimum stays need to be. Like, is this a weekend where we do 3-day minimum, or is this a weekend where we can do 2-day minimum, or do we do no day minimum? That's the hard part. That is the part that is part science, part art, and it's really hard to get reliable data. And for those that have been doing research online, I'll tell you why the occupancy rates are shown as significantly lower when you're trying to use these services. These services, they across the board, they don't work. And here's why. So Jack, let's pretend you have a short-term rental unit. It's available today. But right now, as we're recording this exact moment, I'm gonna put your price at let's call it $135. Right now, it shows $135 and it's available. So the system, the software that you're trying to use to grab data, they tend to scrape the site and they go, oh, cool, Jack's property is available. It's $135 right now. 60 seconds later, it scrapes again and it says, and for whatever reason, it is now no longer available. 9 times out of 10, the software says, oh, it must have got rented. And since the last price was $135, then it must have rented for $135. Now, Jack, does the software know that the reason you actually closed or that unit is now not available, does it know that you had a corporation contact you saying, hey, we have some people coming and we need to get them trained. We would like to rent it for $200 a night. Do you mind if we take the next week? Does the software know that?
No,
it
doesn't. What if a pipe burst and you closed it because it had maintenance? Does the software know that?
Mm-mm.
No, it doesn't. But those two things alone aren't the bad part. Here's the bad part. Your next door neighbor has a completely different intent than you. So what if you've got to hit 135 to make your numbers? That's what makes makes it work. But your next door neighbor who's living in the place or has a completely different intent or only wants to rent it on the weekend says, you know what? We can let it go for $80. Does that mean that you're only going to get $80? No, it means they got $80 because they have a completely different business intent than you. And the software doesn't know that either.
Mm-hmm.
So it can't accurately tell you how much your property is going to rent for or what your occupancy rate is going to be. That's the challenge when you look online and it says occupancy rates are in the 40s or 50s or 60s, is that it's giving you so many false positives that you can't get rid of right now that you really don't know.
Yeah, understood. I love the stuff that you're saying, and obviously, I'm a marketing guy, and I'm also a systems guy.
Yep.
So when you start talking about leveraging technology, that gets me excited.
Yep.
And yes, there's no question things are changing, and we're leveraging technology in our business all the time. And but from a marketing guy standpoint, I think the thing that you said that I really appreciated the most is really understanding your audience.
Yes.
You know, it's even in our world of a regular turnkey. I mean, we're mostly in C class, and we know exactly what that class of renter typically is going to behave like, or when they misbehave, we have a pretty good idea of what that's also going to look like, right?
Correct.
And so that to me is just hugely important for any entrepreneur, anybody going into any venture, is you really have to understand who you're serving, who you're servicing. Because once you know that, the game gets a whole lot easier once you're very clear on that.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, since you're marketing, let's go one step deeper. One of the reasons that this is the part that when I figured this part out, I almost lost it, because it was, I just couldn't believe it was true, because you know what it costs to gain one investor, or how much money you have to spend to get that one tenant. There's a customer acquisition cost. It exists in every business. Well, and that's what I try to tell people. I mean, yes, you've heard of sites like Airbnb and HomeAway, but have you heard of Wimdu, or have you heard of Wimdu or FlipKey, or and there's just so many. There's so many other sites. It's ridiculous. What they are is they are your customer acquisition channel. That's all they are. They're not anything more than that. And when you begin to treat them that way, you start looking at the numbers differently. So I'll take Airbnb, for example, simple because it's the one most people are familiar with, and they know about it. Understand that when you go into business, if you're going to be in business, you're likely going to have to accept debit and or credit cards. And there's a fee for that you, the entrepreneur, get the privilege of paying. All right. And let's just, for the sake of argument, let's call it 3%. All right. It could be lower depending on volume. I know this, but let's just call it 3%. Well, interestingly, when you were acquiring your customer, understand, in a traditional business, you got to pay the marketing expense, and you're going to process that business and process that transaction, and it's going to cost you 3%. The value proposition for the person renting or holding property out available on Airbnb, for example, is that they do all of that. They literally pay all of the marketing costs, and they only charge us 3% total, 3% of the reservation in total. When I realized that, I was like, hold on. You mean I don't have to pay for the credit card processing on top of that? You mean you're going to handle the chargebacks and you're going to market for them? And then you're going to give me their name, phone number, and email? Hold on. Wait a minute. And that's the key that most people miss when they start thinking about short-term rentals. It's not about that first time. It's not about that first transaction. It's the second. It's the third. We've had some customers stay with us literally 17 times. No joke, because that's part of their job. That's part of their business, or they're seeing a medical specialist over and over and over again. Well, we'll leverage the site once so that they come through that site, but then we can go back and market to them directly and charge them less. We net more. Everybody's happy. That's where the money is. You just leverage these sites to build your database really, really quickly, because the challenge with most businesses when an entrepreneur is thinking of it isn't, do you have a good idea? It's, do you have a great sales system that can sell that idea to people who are willing to give you money? And they're doing it for you and only charging you 3%.
Yeah, fantastic. Love that. Just last question, because we're clearly running out of time. We could talk to you all day. You're just
you're talking about stuff I want to talk about.
I know, it's awesome. Why do you think? I mean, look, you mentioned the hotels.
Yeah.
And they have certain stodgy ways of doing things or whatever. But look, it's the hospitality industry is cutthroat competitive, just like any other industry. Why do you think that this whole trend towards short-term rentals and Airbnb and all that other kind of stuff has become so desirable? And why have the hotel chains not embraced some of this same philosophy?
Got it. So here's what happened. They violated the law of ephemeralization, simply doing more with less. Why? Because they didn't have to. They're not as cutthroat as you think. They're more colluding, in my opinion, because let's just say, if you knew there was a high barrier to entry to your business, might you get together with all of your friends and say, hey, if we all collectively do this way, we never have to improve because the customer has no other option. They didn't have a need or a reason. There was no way for competition to enter the market and force them to innovate. And because they weren't forced to innovate, they didn't. Now, what happened is technology snuck up from behind them and suddenly took what is a very uncommon opportunity and made it available to you and I. That's literally all that happened. That little rectangular device in your hand right now, known as your phone, became your primary computing device, became your primary camera. And now, by virtue of the fact somebody creating an application that simply connected two people who had a need. I have space, I have a need to fill it, I would like to travel, and I need a place to stay. That's the barrier to entry. And you already had one. So because you already had the phone, it was there. They got lazy. That's what happened. That's what happened with taxis. They got lazy. That's what happened with restaurants, and now we have food trucks. That's what happened with retail stores. That's why we've got your eBays and Amazons. Mm-hmm. They got lazy at the end of the day. And now they're trying to fight to protect territory. And here's the thing. You and I would do the same thing. If we were the incumbent, we would fight to protect our territory. And that's what you're seeing play out in the marketplace. But ultimately, it'll get worked out. And if you've been paying attention at all, here's what has been happening. A lot of the larger hotel chains have been buying and purchasing smaller boutique firms and literally turning them into their version of short-term rentals. I've seen it happen over and over and over again, whether it be the high-end short-term rental or the lower-end short-term rental. Either way it goes, this is exactly they're literally buying time because there's more of us than them. And what has happened is it's become really, really efficient for you and I to just literally sell one day at a time. And you get enough people doing that. And yes, suddenly your profit margin is going to go way, way down. And here's the truth of the matter. There's so much profit in this particular business model that you don't even have, like I said, you don't have to do it well or right for that matter, and actually for it to work for you and for you to make some significant additional money. In fact, in many neighborhoods, and I know this is true from my neighborhood, a lot of my neighbors would do just fine. They could literally 2 weekends a month, if they just took 2 weekends a month and rented out their house, they'd probably pay their mortgage.
Yeah.
It's all it takes. And we just don't realize what we're sitting on and how valuable what we can provide actually is. And now that the technology is there and made it possible, hotels are just defending their territory, and it makes total sense. But I ultimately know we'll find a way to work with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. Mind officially blown. And, I just want to thank you for really everything, for your incredible entrepreneurial insights about how the way things work, for just like the sheer brute intelligence that you bring to the table, just your forward-thinking ideas. Like, it's freaking awesome. This has been a fabulous interview, and we will certainly make sure to you go ahead and tell us again about, we're going to put in the show notes, but how can people find out about what you're up to?
Sure. So the best way to catch up with us, again, we do have a podcast in iTunes. It's cashflowdiarypodcast.com. It's also available in Google and Stitcher and so on.
And I will interject, you have amazing guests like me on that show. Just saying, right?
Absolutely. And if you want to find out more specifically about what we're doing in the short-term rental space, if a lot of what I shared with you right now was exciting and intriguing, feel free to go over to cashflowdiary.com/star, STAR, cashflowdiary.com/star, STAR.
Nice. And for any of the listeners that really feel like Jack and I are under or unappreciated, and you want to send some kudos of appreciation for all the hard work we do in the turnkey industry, we are not going to turn it down. Okay. Right. FYI.
Well, we've got to earn it, right, Shecky?
We earn it every day, brother.
Yeah.
Every day. Anyway, thank you, Jack, for your leadership, and Jay, again, thank you for being such an amazing guest. That is a wrap.